Welcome to Power Insights from the business of hockey and the goal with your host, Les Kowalski. Pull up a chair and get a front row seat to business insights and knowledge, helping you accelerate in understanding business. Let's start this episode.
Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Welcome to part 1 of Power Insights from the new episode series Holy Grail for Wealth Creation. Now, if you haven't had a chance to listen to the last several episodes of my Power Insights COVID-19 disruption series, you should have a listen as it gets into a bit of my background as well as talking about the comfort zone and how I perceive what a comfort zone is and how one needs to begin to frame things up in their mind to be able to move beyond it, as well as discussing the perspective that regardless if you are a business leader or you're running an established organization or if you're a family trying to set up a new business to diversify your monthly revenue streams, the one common thread between both groups is being in startup mode. One of the other things that I mentioned in my last episode is it's difficult for people to have an understanding or an awareness of how to move beyond an artificial boundary they may create in their mind, which can then prevent them from creating a business model so they can generate revenue in new alternative ways. I thought it was fitting to create this new episode series as it will also extend into the new Black Ops Blackboard educational platform. I'm also going to define what I mean by the phrase Holy Grail for wealth creation. If you haven't listened to the previous 3 Power Insights episode called COVID-19 Disruption, you should have a listen to them after this episode because it's going to add further perspective for you. I decided to change the title in this series from using the word COVID-19 because I think that the word COVID-19 is starting to create some anxiety amongst people, and the uncertainty that it's bringing and what I want to be able to focus on is more of the process and perspectives that are required in order to be able to generate revenue in this new type of uncertainty. If you go back to episode 1 of the COVID-19 Disruption series within Power Insights, I provide a bit of a background on myself and some of the things that I've done in my business career. One of the things that I'm very efficient at is being able to isolate and develop methods to break through into niche markets that have a high access barrier to entry. This is the common thread that goes through my personal portfolio that I discussed in episode 1 and is outlined on my LinkedIn page. The question becomes, how do you start connecting all the pieces together in order to be able to achieve a certain outcome? Power Insights is about translating business, but I'm also evolving it to include business from the digital perspective and developing business into a digital format that can interact in the digital economy to earn revenue successfully. As I said in my previous episode, COVID-19 is created a situation where the year 2030 has been moved up by 10 years, and that's extremely significant. If you're going to create a business, regardless if you're an existing company or if you're a family that's looking to diversify your revenue, you need to be looking towards the future. And what I mean by this is that whatever you create today, you have to ask yourself the question, is what I'm creating today something that was actually relevant in 2010, or is it going to be relevant in 2030? Even if you listen to what governments are doing at local and federal level about reopening the economy across different countries, there's still a very high risk that unfortunately this entire event is not going away anytime soon. As I said previously, these measures that are going to be put in place by government more than likely will be in place for 24 months as a minimum. This creates a major problem because now you have bricks and mortar businesses that are unable to cover their overhead and generate any type of significant profit to function. And on the flip side, you have families who want to diversify their monthly revenue in order to be able to pay their monthly bills. The one common theme, as I said before, between both groups is that both are in startup mode. And the only feasible path to be able to generate revenue under these COVID-19 restrictions is to be able to generate money by building on top of the internet and generating money from the digital economy. There are some organizations who took initiatives previously, so they're able to sell in an online environment, but there's a lot of complacency and fear towards what having a digital presence actually means. So you have a lot of existing businesses that have been caught behind the eight ball, not knowing the path of how to move forward in a certain direction and be able to put themselves out of that situation that they're presently in and will be into the future. So there's one thing that I'm going to say before I continue. You cannot allow complacency to be able to have a seat at the table with you. Because if you do allow complacency to take hold, as I said before, you will be left behind. And the longer that you do not act in putting certain measures into your organization or into your family in place now, you're going to fall further behind. And it's going to become much more difficult to be able to pull yourself out of things. This goes back to what I was talking about when dealing with the comfort zone. I believe that the comfort zone has two main components that prevents people from being able to move forward. One part has to do with fear, while the other part has to do with the qualities resembling that of an addiction. And so how do I define Holy Grail for wealth creation? The Holy Grail for wealth creation, in my opinion, is being able to make money while you sleep. Some of the greatest wealth that's been created in this modern age is by leveraging technology. The reason why I'm focusing on the digital side as an avenue for generating revenue and long-term financial sustainability is because it allows you to have the option for scalability. I want to explain the relevance of what I mean by this. I have an individual in my LinkedIn network by the name of Juan Campos. He works on the business accelerator side, investing in businesses between 2 and 10 million US dollars. He put together a document that talks about an individual by the name of Sam Altman, who is an investor in Airbnb, Reddit, Stripe, and Pinterest. This document talks about tips on how to be successful. And I really like this document because the content is straight up truth. I want to share parts of this document with you because I believe that it has a lot of merit and it's going to provide a very unique perspective for you as you move forward. There's one section that's called Compound Yourself, and it talks about how people get bogged down in linear opportunities and they need to be willing to let them go in order to focus on opportunities that are compounding themselves. And it talks about how you need to be able to trust yourself and be patient with the things that you're doing. It talks about how it's critical that you need to be able to believe in yourself and that you have to have the perspective to be able to reject popular opinions so that you can create opportunity for yourself in the future. And that is how value is created. You have to be willing to have your mind work on the outer edges of the bell-shaped curve, in my opinion. Otherwise, you won't be able to gain traction and move beyond the white noise that you have to punch through. It talks about self-belief, that it must be balanced with self-awareness, and that truth-seeking is hard and often painful, but it is what separates self-belief from self-delusion. It talks about how it's important to be able to think independently. Regardless if you're in a school environment or you're not in a school environment, you have to be able to move beyond that comfort zone that I discussed in the last 3 Power Insights episodes. In my opinion, the true root anchors that prevent a person from being able to move forward is because of fear and being immersed in the qualities associated with that of an addiction. It talks about how it's really critical that you get good at sales and that self-belief alone is not sufficient, that you have to be able to convince other people of what you believe and that all careers in some degree have a sales component to them. It talks about how good communication, especially written communication, is very critical to be able to clearly and concisely explain what your perspectives are. This is something that I really agree with. People need to buy in. The best way to be good at sales is to genuinely believe in what you're selling. You don't have to be the used car salesman in doing a pitch, but you need to be able to believe in yourself. That belief and passion will be able to bridge whatever skill sets in sales that you're lacking, and they will develop themselves out over time as you continue to do it over and over again. Practice makes perfect. So don't be afraid, just start and it will build on itself. Talks about how it's important to work on the right thing than just work many hours on something. It's important to be able to prioritize what accomplishments that you're trying to achieve. It talks about how you need to be able to work hard without burning out, and that it's important to be able to follow your curiosity so that things that you're excited about will come across to other people who also will see that you're excited about it, and that will excite them. One of the areas that I keep bringing up is being able to work within a niche market if you're setting up a business. And it's really critical that you're able to secure your position in that niche market. When you're dealing with a niche market, it more than likely is going to have a high entry barrier to access it. So you need to be able to break through those barriers and secure your position, which is something that I'm going to be talking about more, especially within Black Ops Blackboard. One of the other things that's talked about in this document is that it needs to be hard for someone to compete with you, meaning that if what you're doing can be done by someone else, it eventually is going to be done and it's going to be done for less money. And that the best way to become difficult for someone to compete with you is to build up leverage, which, for example, can include personal relationships or a brand or the convergence between different fields. There are other strategies that you can use, but I'm in agreement within these broad strokes because without having that uniqueness, you're going to be competing on price and the potential erosion of your market share. Sometimes it happens simultaneously. One of the other sections in this document, it talks about how you actually generate true wealth and that it's by owning things, not by having a salary based on an hourly rate. What it talks about is that to build true wealth, it is about owning things that increase rapidly in value, or by owning a piece of real estate or intellectual property or a resource of some kind that's tangible. It's important that you need to own some type of equity instead of just selling your time, as time only scales linearly. And the final section in the document has to do with being internally driven. I really liked this document the first time I read it and really wanted to share it because it's real and it's straight up. It's important for all types of entrepreneurs to be aware of this type of perspective. In this modern age, it's about knowing processes and perspectives that can shorten the time frame for allowing you to achieve whatever goals that you've set out for yourself. And it's my belief that a business in a digital format leveraging the digital economy, regardless if it's a standalone online or an extension of a bricks and mortar business, you need to be able to have flexibility. And so COVID-19 has created an economic mess. The question that you have to ask yourself, if you're going to create a new business in a digital format, you need to put some thought into it. And you have to be able to ask yourself, does my product or service fit into the world of 2030? The internet did not exist before the 1990s in a commercial form. And so you had to access it in a dial-up. Without the innovations that have gone through since the 1990s, we would have not been able to have the option to be able to generate revenue for ourselves in more creative ways while this COVID-19 situation is playing itself out in economies around the world. It's important to understand the different mechanisms on how wealth is created using business as a vehicle. In my opinion, the original wealth creation mechanism is real estate development. Real estate development has to be one of the most cutthroat businesses that I ever got exposed to because the entire industry is based on knowledge and relationships. If you look at a lot of the old school real estate developers, they will not put information into a computer. They only have it on physical paper and they will not use or they minimize the usage of computers for doing real estate development related transactions. There is a mechanism that is called an option used to secure a piece of land. Basically, it's a process of convincing someone to allow you to have the privilege to have exclusive control over a piece of property for a period of time, to be able to then secure that investment for that property or securing a zoning from a town council. And I've seen some crazy stuff when it comes to real estate development acquisitions. But I think one of the craziest things I had seen was this mid-sized developer trying to secure 400 acres of oceanfront property by paying for an option, then trying to ram the design plans through town council to get zoning for the property, and then flip the property to an investment group being sold to the highest bidder all at the same time. When it comes to real estate development, it all has to do with the strategy of what it is that you're actually doing and how you're executing it. But there's no question in my mind that the real estate development industry and the developers that are involved in that industry, they are some of the most cutthroat business groups that I've ever come across. The biggest thing when it comes to real estate development is that it has to do with relationships and being able to convince someone to give you access to a certain piece of land. Real estate development has less to do with trying to acquire property that's in the open market within the realtor network, and it's more about the negotiation side of finding opportunities randomly on raw, non-developed land. I'm going to talk more about this in Black Ops Blackboard, as well as other structures as it relates to real estate development. So as I discussed previously, creating true wealth doesn't come from your labor time value, as it only scales linearly, but the equity investment that you're securing into something. As far as I'm concerned, if you are going to put your time into something, it needs to be able to scale so that it can create an option for you for long-term financial sustainability. It's very difficult, but not impossible, to secure land for real estate development projects, which can create that long-term financial sustainability. The next best option is technology and being able to leverage it, which then also ensures that it can scale. Generating revenue in a business, it is all about uniqueness. If you can create or secure something that is unique, which can be a product or service or knowledge, and that is not readily available and cannot be easily copied, this can be leveraged into a business that will then allow you to generate revenue off it. And if it can be turned into a digital format, it will lay the groundwork so that it can scale to create wealth. One of the areas that I'm also going to go into detail later on is how do you build your own app when you have no technical skills? Here's some cold hard facts for any business owners that are going through the current situation with COVID-19. From the book Stall Points, it says that once a company runs up against any type of stall in its growth, only less than 10% ever fully recover. So if you look at organizations like Boeing and you look at all the major airlines and you look at brick and mortars, retail outlets, and small businesses, COVID-19 creates a negative exposure for all of them, making it extremely difficult to recover from. Recently, organizations like J.Crew in the United States have gone into bankruptcy protection, as well as Neiman Marcus. Most businesses are not going to recognize when their business model is going to stall, but the main reason for this impact on a business is because of disruption. And if you look at what disruption means at the most basic level, it refers to a transfer of wealth from one part of the industry that has organizations who are dominant to another part of the industry that has organizations that are underdogs. Disruption dismantles a business by identifying what its core competencies are to generate revenue, and then it erodes their market share in an extreme fashion. Thanks for listening. Until next time.